In this video, I'm going to talk about how to add reciprocal motion to your lunges and split squats. So reciprocal motion, all that means is that one side is doing something different than the other side. And for our lunge and split squat variations, we're going to focus on our hips and our rib cage doing different things on both sides. So it's pretty simple. We're going to add a little bit of rotation to make that happen. So as you drop down into a split squat or a lunge, you're going to intentionally rotate your hips and your rib cage in towards your forward leg while your head stays straight ahead and your femurs stay in line, the same way we covered in our previous video about lunge and split squat variations. So it should look like something like this. And again, it doesn't matter if it's a lunge or a split squat variation, that's what we're going for. So we use reciprocal motion in lunges to help improve the amount of movement variability or movement options that you have. So oftentimes we pair these with mobility and breathing exercises where we're hopefully increasing your movement potential or the amount of motion that you have available to you at your hips and throughout your entire body, and then teaching you how to manage that, because we can do these at relatively moderate loads and at slow speeds, which is really ideal for learning. And the reason why we want movement or to utilize, have that movement at the hips, because more isn't necessarily always better, but we want to have enough to where we can distribute loads across tissues. If we're really locked up in all our athletic endeavors because of the position of our hips and the tissues around them, and we can barely move, we're stressing the same tissues over and over again. So if every time I'm running, I'm barely moving like this, the articular surface here, the tissues all around my hips are being stressed in the same way over and over and over again for tens of thousands of reps. If I can teach those tissues how to utilize a larger range of motion, so both from a physiological, like local tissue perspective, what's happening in my joint, and neurologically, I'm teaching myself how to manage that motion, that distributes the loads across tissues in your body and makes you far more resilient and less likely to have overuse injuries. So when doing our reciprocal motion, let's look at the cues and the things I want you to focus on when looking at it from the side. So just like all our lunge variations, this is what it's going to look like when it's done well. You want to keep stacked your head, your rib cage, and your hips and be in a straight line from your ear to your knee. All you're thinking of doing is adding rotation while keeping that plane, again, perfectly vertical. So to do that, you want to think of reaching back with the hand that is on the same side as the forward leg. So I have my right leg forward here, and as I go into this reverse lunge, I think of reaching my thumb to my back pocket, keeping my eyes pointed straight ahead and staying nice and stacked vertically. What you want to avoid doing is reaching forward with the trailing leg hand. As soon as you do that, that weight will move you forward, especially if you have any kind of weight in your hands, and you'll start to tilt forward, and it'll look something like this. It pulls you into it. And while you're getting that nice rotation, we want to do that while staying stacked. So we're getting the rotation with that nice vertical axis, not tilting forward. So again, think of leading with your forward leg hand and putting that into your back pocket. Just like this. And you get that nice rotation, staying stacked vertically. So from the front, we want to focus on the same cues that we covered in our previous video about fundamental split squat and lunge variations, where we want to keep the femurs pointed in a straight line. The difference this time is that our hips are going to be rotating into the forward leg and then back to center. So if you think of headlights here, my femurs stay straight ahead, but my hips are going to rotate into that forward leg. So it looks like this. The headlights turn in and I come back out. You'll notice as you do this, especially if you move really quickly, you've got all this momentum, and then your femur is going to want to swing out with you. So it's going to want to do this. You'll feel the weight go to the outside of your foot, and as you come back forward and you swing, oftentimes you orient back the opposite direction. So slow yourself down a little bit as you start learning how to do these. So you're staying nice and tall, and then you move very slowly so you can control that motion. You might feel that knee wanting to fly out. Again, keep that tripod foot, big toe, little toe heel. Think of crushing your big toe into the floor, staying balanced, and then right back to center. So a nice slow tempo is very helpful for, again, allowing yourself to rotate but not having the leg and the foot go along for the ride. So in terms of adding load to your reciprocal lunges and split squats, let's go over how to do that from easiest to hardest. The easiest way is going to be to have the weight on the leg that is forward. This is helpful because it's going to help you rotate with that nice vertical orientation, staying upright without caving forward. So again, if my left leg's forward, I have the weight in the left hand. As I drop down, I try to put my left hand into my left back pocket and right back to center. The next easiest variation is with 2 weights. Same idea here. You just want to move nice and slow and don't let that forward hand drag you forward and cave forward. And then from there, having the weight in the trailing leg hand. This is a little bit harder than with 2 weights because it's really gonna pull you into that hip. And so it's very easy to collapse forward and difficult to keep that nice vertical orientation stacked as you drop down. So you still wanna think of reaching back with the forward leg hand to help control that motion. The last one is either a goblet or any kind of rack hold here. Again, rotation here is gonna be a little harder because as you introduce a load up high, you have to create more tension to stabilize that. As you have more tension, you're gonna start limiting the motion, or the rotation that you have through your upper body. This is the same reason why you never do reciprocal motion variations with any kind of load on your back. Safety squat bar, a straight bar, anything like that, because by default, you're gonna have to extend, create more tension through your entire body to help stabilize that load. And as you do that, you limit your rotation. That's not necessarily a bad thing. That's just why you don't wanna have that kind of load when you're doing reciprocal motion type activity. So again, you can do a little bit lighter load in a goblet position, but you're gonna have a little bit less rotation available to you than if you have lighter loads at the sides. So an important concept to keep in mind when programming these into your workouts is that load will never be heavy with these, ever. Because as you add load, tension goes up. As tension goes up, rotation shuts down. And that's what we're trying to drive with this activity. We're trying to learn how to control getting a nice rotation in and out of the hip that we can then translate to higher intensity exercises at a later time. So when you're programming these, they should either be done with a good amount of volume or really nice slow tempos, or with a lot of density. Density being doing a good amount of reps in a short period of time. That's how you're gonna get a really solid training effect without needing to increase the load a bunch. So to recap, we wanna stick with all of the cues and basic movement strategies that we talked about in the previous video where we went over dialing in our fundamental lunge and split squat variations. The only difference being that we're adding some rotation. So that means our hips and our rib cage are going to rotate into that forward leg hip and then come back to center. To do this, we want to maintain that nice vertical orientation throughout our spine. So our head, our rib cage, and our hips are stacked. And to help drive that rotation without going to extremes, you want to slow down the tempo and thinking of reaching back with whatever the forward leg hand is and putting that into your back pocket, even if you have a little bit of weight in your hands, and then coming back up to center. That'll help you dial in this reciprocal motion variations and get the most out of them.